my very, very esteemed friend who's a member of parliament and who's an extremely dynamic political activist, as well as she was a brilliant lawyer when she was at the bar. She still continues to be at the bar. There's no bar against people practicing. Now, I want her to tell us how sincere are they about enforcing these rules that have come into position. When is the act really going to be seriously enforced? Why do we still see children begging on the roadside? Now, when are you going to get the infrastructure for the schools? I know that the Prime Minister has made some extremely positive statements about having toilets for girl children and in schools for all of them. Why only girl children? Even the boys are entitled to to privacy and a toilet. So toilets, safe drinking water, some of the very basic needs, when are they going to be addressed? And what is this wrangling that's going on in the sharing of the money of what is being collected in the cess fund between the very backward states and the other states, like Bihar, for instance. Now, the rule that you have is that for every 75 rupees that the government of India pays, the state government has to pay 25 rupees. Now, there are states, I don't say their poverty was natural. They've been impoverished by corrupt politicians in the past. I am not putting any blame on anybody's door. But this has happened. Now, the Bihar government is frankly saying that they are not in a position to give this much money. So their application is for a lesser amount so that their contribution will be reduced to that extent. I once remember that we represented the Bihar state when Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav was the chief minister of Bihar, and he gave me a check for 600 rupees in those days for, for something that I had done, some appearance in the court, and the check bounced. State of Bihar's check for 600 rupees bounced. So I'm saying I can well understand and relate to their poverty created, of course, purely man-made and nothing to do with anything else, and politician-made. We want to know, we want to hear from you something positive which will cheer our heart, to say that there are some serious steps, and we'd also like to know what these serious steps are, to see how you're going to establish infrastructure for the children. And now I'm going to give the floor to my extremely esteemed and learned friend.
Yeah. As per the request of Meenakshi ji, as per the Meenakshi ji request, I'm just asking her to present a prize to the students to begin. Yeah, now. Okay, little 5 minutes. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Thank you very much. I am in a frightful hurry, but I'll rather respond. I'll rather respond and then give the prize, because awards can be given by anyone. But I will rather respond. I'll rather respond. Lata ji, yes, please. Please do.
While working with International Labour Organization on a project, I have come to know that there are various proposals put up in front of the Ministry of Labour Welfare with regards to the recognition of the child labour working as domestic workers. So I want to know about that as well. What our government is doing to make these domestic workers recognized as labour class? Because there is no law, no act which covers the domestic workers as a class of laborers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, responding to what my friend Lata and Ms. Alka and Mr. Mark Snyder. To begin with, I'm only responding to what Lata ji had to say, and my response to her is that even today in the Parliament we were discussing the dropout rates of tribal students, and the dropout rate is close to 50%. And you'll be surprised, and I'm adding only to what she had to say, that all-encompassing corruption which has prevailed in this country for past many decades, and one has fought a very hard battle in the past to be where one has reached. And I can always say that the good deeds of my forefathers, that I'm here, because they were the ones who fought those battles. And because of their good work, I've only added a little. Coming to specifics, there are schools which do not have adequate landmass. The law says give 1.5 acre minimum school recognition. Now, if I stick to this rule, my students don't get educated. 1.5 acre because we want to give facilities in terms of sports, etc. Uh, Coming from a country which is as varied as India and going to circumstances which are very, very varied, I may sound a bit off the mark when I say to hell with 1.5 acre of land. It's more important that you study and you go to school and college to study, and sports you can play on the streets or the parks. It doesn't matter whether school has that facility or not. Ideally, I don't live in a utopian world where I say everything should be ideal. When the fight is against basic survival, for example, the toilet, safe drinking water, and somehow getting students to the school, where is the fight going to be? What are you going to fight first? Are you going to fight over that till the school does not have 1.5 acre you're not going to recognize, or you're going to recognize as many schools as possible so that as many students get educated, and for their sports facilities maybe there could be a common sports facility, a sports center or a gym or whatever, and allow them to play there. Which is your priority? According to me, holistic development is definitely part of education and education system, and is very, very important for any participatory democracy. At the same time, when I'm making a point that people need to participate in any democratic process and good governance process, which has been missing from this country, most important thing is getting people on board and getting them to read, write, understand, and get that developmental aspect in place. Where people don't get 2 square meal a day, what are you going to fight for? So I guess depending on the situations and circumstances, there has to be some kind of modulation, and certain rules need to be softened up so that as many kids start going to school as possible, and giving them nutritious meal, which is midday meal kind of a thing, is far more important than many ancillary things which ideally should be there. But I don't live in a utopian world, and I understand I'm a realist, and because I'm a realist, I will rather get more and more students to go to school, learn to innovate, learn to develop skills of all kinds, and that skill training, education again is not all about academics. Unfortunately, the focus too much has been laid on academic excellence. I'm not saying we can do away with academic excellence. Academic excellence definitely is important for those who want to excel in academics. But everybody should not be forced into academics, and people should have a choice of skill training and get on to the innovation and skill India kind of a program, which is far more relevant, because what we do in, say, fitters, technicians, is far, far, far more important to India or any developing world, or any developed world also, as compared to academic excellence of doing algebra and geometry. I'm not saying those are less relevant things, but that is what creates a great divide in a all-inclusive society. The great divide comes because either you have excellent academicians, people who could just create Mars model out of nothing and minimalistic expense, and you have such good scientific knowledge, but you don't have good plumbers and you don't have good electricians. So I think this is the gap which a person like me would try and focus on. You have the best software engineers this country has produced in the world, and at the same time, when you need a small time repair job of a computer, you need to hunt for one. So I guess this gap, if the education system can bridge, is what I'm looking at. Getting students to the school. Now, children who are in begging, or otherwise I can say homeless kids, I have met some of them who could be in their 20s and 30s today. I asked them, and I found them sleeping on the road, and I was very concerned. I said, how can you sleep on the road? Because 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, at times I'm on my rounds outside Hanuman Mandir. So a lot of people from the neighborhood started saying, oh, they are drug addicts, etc., etc. And somebody was without a shirt and was just trying to wear a shirt. I looked at the physique and I said, look, this person doesn't look to be a drug addict, because drug addiction would make a person sloppier in responses. And there's something wrong, because I think this person could be a homeless person but not a drug addict. So don't start brandishing people as drug addicts simply because somebody's sleeping on the road. So I called out these boys and I said, what's the matter? Why are you on the roads? It's ever since we can remember, we've been living on the roads. And I came from Bihar, so and so came from whichever part of the country. And I said, you recognize your parents? They said, no, we don't. We were small, we don't even know how we landed here. Somebody was 6-year-old, somebody was 5-year-old, and 3, 4, etc., etc. And I said, okay, if I do some, I definitely put in some work, and I put some work so that you all get some employment benefit, because it was opposite Hanuman Mandir. I said, how about collecting the flowers from the mandir and coming up with a model where you recycle the flowers, the organic material, and make dhoop batti out of it, which can be sold, and it could be commercially viable model. Plus, it could reprocess the waste material coming from the temple precinct. They said, we'll be happy to do it. And many of us are trained in mehndi, tattoo, and several such things. And we work with the tent walas to pick up the saman. But we come back and live here. And a couple of students had studied up to class 10th. Now, according to me, that's a huge resource. And anybody who has a sensitive soul or a heart would start bleeding listening to these stories, because as a representative of political will in a system, you feel how much more needs to be done and how much is still less, because this is the resource this country has. People who are healthy, people who are honest, and people who are not engaging in criminality. Why should this resource be not put on the right track? And I give a lot of credit to the culture of this country, that in spite of such adversities, whole lot of people could actually gang up and become gangsters and whatever else, but have chosen to live a straight life in spite of very, very pathetic circumstances where society didn't come forward. Now, answering the question in affirmative, which Ms. Lata has asked, that what is the government going to do about it? I think when we discuss the resources, we need to prioritize. Of course, human resource is a great priority, because without human resource, we are really not looking at skilled India or build India or make in India. So resource needs to be strengthened. At the same time, what is the priority? I think the priority is, first priority is to survive. And survival means basic hours, clean drinking water and toilet is a must for everyone. And only post that, everything ancillary to that can come up, and this will have to be done in a phased manner. And from where resources are going to be generated, the resources are going to be generated from public-private partnership. There's no way government does not have that kind of resource to build all over India. And the biggest example is the example which Ms. Lata herself has given, that 600 rupees check could bounce, means how bankrupt the state governments are. End of the day, the education system works not just by the center, but center in a great harmony with the state. Now, if states are going bankrupt and they don't have money to pay their teachers, from where are you going to talk about Educate India? And if the resources are going to be tight, there's no methodology to change that strength. The only way to change that is Skill India, Build India, and Make in India, which will generate employment. People who have already been homeless, people who have no place to go to, are going to be the resource of this country, and it is the technical know-how which I'm looking at. I don't need the scientists to that extent, of course I need, and I respect them a lot, and they are my priority, but I have not even done justice to them over past so many decades. I mean, look at the most intelligent lot in the world is lying wasted in this country. My own PSUs, which could produce the best of technology, I have not allowed them to produce. I have not paid attention to R&D when I know my resources, my human resource and knowledge resource is the greatest in the world. My information and knowledge resource is the best in the world. So I'm not, I mean, don't want to sound like a rhetoric Indian who takes a lot of pride in being an Indian, but really, when I look around, I see this gap, this huge gap, because either you have very, very smart, intelligent people whose resource is not utilized to the best of their ability, or you see a great divide where people are lying wasted. So I think either of the way, this is the gap which needs to be breached. I need scientists, I need mathematicians, I need experts, but I also need technicians. I also need plumbers and electricians and so on and so forth. Once I can train people to do those functions, train them and work on it, I'm sure we are there to build India, and we are very, very serious. And people who are sitting in this hall and others, I'm sure, are a very powerful lobby, because coming from the same fraternity, I know what lawyers are capable of, not just in India, but across the world. They change systems, they change governments, they decide who's going to be on the throne and who's going to be pulled out. So when they have that capacity, I want all of them to come forward. Help me get the CSRs. Let's build toilets. Let's adopt schools. Let's adopt villages. Let's take people to school. Let there be schools in shelter homes. Let there be schools in night shelters. Let people study whatever they wish to. Let people study even under a roadside electricity pole. I don't care, as long as they study, because this used to be a matter of pride when I was growing up, that so and so became what he or she became because that person was studying under the street light. That used